Hello. Hey, thanks for having me here. Um, yeah, we're going to talk about South American markets and South American talent. And I think I'm pretty much going to do, if you are interested in South American markets, I'm going to do part of your homework. So let's jump directly and talk about South American market. I should apologize, that's not the font that I was using, but I think pretty much it's going to look okay. So South America seems to be so close, so easy, so accessible, but yet there no one has been found the key to open up the market and try to have some constant success with their products. So let me introduce myself because I need to show some credentials to talk about this. So what this bald guy knows about it. Well, I come from there. I'm from Chile. I have been working almost a decade on the video game industry and the creative industry for several companies. I used to have my own studio, and fast forward to now, I work as a director of technology and game production at Pebblekick, a publisher based in Pasadena, California, with different offices across the world. Particularly, we have an office and a studio in Chile. So let me explain a little bit more about this. So for people that doesn't know too much, it's South America, awesome places, cool place to go. Everyone needs to go there. And also it's a place you will find such a rich and warm people and culture over there. You need to enjoy it at least once. And it's home of a lot of talent, of such a amount of different type of talents that also goes after the video game industry. You will find such amount of talent, different type of studios, really small studios, consolidated studios, work on mobile, work on PC. Yeah, there is everything. So at this point, you may be asking or wondering, oh, there should be a plethora of titles that are award-winning or world famous, for sure. So there is a lot of titles year after year, winning awards, having more a more solid presence on each market, or being commercially successful year after year. Okay, everything's so perfect so far, but the reality is that sadly the exception of the rule on South America. What I have been showing you so far is just a tiny sample. For one studio that succeeds or project that succeeds, there is 20 to 30 others that are failing, or they are usually closing their doors before 2 years of operation. So that's the sad reality. Also, I could say that a trend that happened on the indie development scene worldwide, but it's really awful what's happening in Latin America. What's happening? If you are behind in the studio, you have been working in the industry, you know that such a problem starts to focusing too much in developing a game or designing a game without thinking on the game needs to perform commercially at some extent. So you need to start designing from the ground up some commercial strategies to hit the markets. So that's where all the problems start to emerge. So one of the biggest fault or the biggest problem that you can start finding in South America and across Latin America too is like the lack of specialists on business design or working commercially under the creative industries. I think that is probably where you are not going to find enough talent there. There is a lot of talent developing wonderful artwork, code, and building wonderful teams, but then they are failing on their commercial strategies. So that's why I have been forced, in order to survive for a decade, starting from the lower position until being the director now, in promoting the projects itself, going outside, getting exposure, working, co-developing, and that has been helping me to construct better understanding on the talents and opportunities that you can find into this market. And now working outside from Latin America is helping me even more in visualize this whole picture. You know, taking that distance really helps in construct that picture, and that's what I would like to share with you. So South America, let's start with the numbers. The numbers is the easiest part. You can find it almost everywhere. Everyone tends to refer to Newzoo. So if you want to know more, it's just Googling it. But I really want to get deeper after the numbers in how important it's not just understanding the numbers, it's understanding what are the dynamics inside the market. So yeah, it's a market that's growing. It's really important. It's around 5%. If you take in account Mexico, if you don't take in account Mexico and you want to focus just in South America, it's a little bit over $4 billion. That's quite interesting. But most of the companies that start jumping into Latin America, they tend to think it's just a smaller market that's complicated to convert. It's not just that. It's a lot more. So most of the most common mistake that I haven't seen some Asian companies jumping into the market has been how they try to interpret how the market works there. So the first thing is like, okay, how it works South America. Yeah, it's a big territory. Then after, what's the biggest subdivision that you can have? Okay, by language, you have two major subdivisions, Spanish and Portuguese. So you have a big market like Brazil and the rest of the countries. And there where the mistakes start. With Brazil, we're okay, we know that works. But the rest of the countries, they have such a special dynamics that differ one to each other, but overlap in some other that you need to take the time to analyze it. Why is that? Because the combined revenue can be higher than just Brazil alone if you get into details. So that's why it's not something that you need to discard right away. So in order to analyze this deeper, there is two key dimensions that you can use to understand the dynamics. So the first one, I mentioned it before, is the local language. If you go after the language, the dynamics are deeper, and you can, depending on the type of project that you want to implement over there, it could be quite complex. But in order to simplify this, yeah, let's keep with Portuguese and Spanish. That will be covering around 92, if I'm right, % of all the population over there. But having something localized doesn't mean that it's relevant for the people over there. So those things are quite different, and usually that's the mistake. So what's relevant for the people over there? Do you know what type of content they prefer? What type of media they prefer over the other genres, and so on? The other thing that you need to keep in mind also, if you are thinking just jumping into Brazil, with Spanish you have a huge edge. It's like Spanish applied for South America, but then extend over Central America and keeps going even for North America with Mexico and a huge part of the population of the United States too. So you have a edge if you work with Spanish too. So just to prove these 2 points with us, that dimensions with some facts, is like, yeah, the people across South America tend to prefer content in their local language, even if are coming from a local source or an external source. And one of the key elements that you need to keep in mind about the relevance of the content is that most of the people that haven't jumped yet in being a fully active user on any internet-connected device is because the lack of relevant content for them. Why is that? It's because the media, the traditional media, is so strong in some places in Latin America that still there is no content relevant for some target user bases in some of these countries. So in order to try to strategize for Latin America and make an effective plan, it's like you need to try to find some common grounds overlapping relevance on the content and obviously on the language. And how you can do that jumping from outside of South America, you need to find the right local partners. So those right partners could help you with user exposure and localization. Localization is quite simple, it's just a language. It should be reculturization, but I'm going to talk about that in just a minute. So that missing link in how you can make content relevant is important. It's critical because there is no way you are going to force a simple 2D platform and make it successful there if is not going to be relevant for most of the people over and over. So there is a third dimension that you need to add over this. So this one is where, in order to make the content relevant, it needs to at least look like that is a local source. It doesn't need to be a real local source, but need to look like that it's relevant coming from that culture. So in order to make some content relevant, the first thing that you need to analyze or observe is how the other verticals in the entertainment industry are working, and apply a couple filters. So it's like, how I can work with these partners is through local consulting, reculturization, co-development, or licensing IP. So given that you have those three covered, I want to show you one point that apply in those verticals that are not video game, but are going to prove the relevance on how you can adapt that content. So, for example, this map shows that the TV content produced in Spain, how relevant or the penetration that has through Latin America, and you can even say it can even look that even in Brazil it has a good percentage, and it's because it's relevant. Then after come obviously the localization and so on. What makes so relevant all this content? And that's one point that comes later that I'm going to explain. Well, particularly the genre of this is drama. That's a huge thing across Latin America, actually, soap operas. And remember that I mentioned that the traditional media is so strong in Latin America. One key thing, for example, to analyze is, for example, for Chile, from I come from, Chile has one of the highest number of internet penetration and smartphone penetration across South America. But even so, the amount of time that people is spending on the traditional media like television is higher than internet. Why is that? It's because obviously the content hasn't been penetrated yet into internet, so that's making it more difficult for them to justify spending more time in internet than being on the TV. So that's one of the key things why you need to go back and analyze those other verticals in media to see what content is relevant, how I can bring it back, or how I can piggyback on those to make my games relevant or my content relevant through some other IPs or genres, okay? What about the local telecoms? This is something that works quite well on Asia for us, but it's not happening in Latin America yet, sadly. It used to be quite good on where Java games were a thing, but not anymore. Nowadays, everything is like the Wild West. So you need to stick at least on mobile with Google and Apple. Other thing that I have in here mentioned a lot across the difficulties on the dynamics in understanding the dynamics is how the monetization changed. Well, it's like the rate is around 5 people over 1 will prefer to having something free and consume any advertisement that you want to offer to them instead paying premium. And that obviously forces you to change all your monetization strategy from Tier 1 countries into Latin America. And given that the growth that we are seeing in mobile is incredible, you can expect that everything needs to shift over there. So at the end, mentioned all of that, I think the key in order to have a successful landing in Latin America needs to come with a longer term commitment, not just one shot. So that comes, then again, understanding those 3 dimensions in three things that need to pass through your source material. That's analyzing from the relevance, genres, popular genres or subject for the people over there. Then the language, that's not just translation, it's reculturization, culture. And then the source, are you going to work with an intellectual property or you want to bring your own intellectual property over there? And then questioning, it's relevant at all? It's going to work or not? So those are the key that you need to wonder why the project could have a fair chance to success, or you need to start spending money and money. Creating this type of pipeline and optimize it is going to put you in a wonderful position to compete against bigger actors in Latin America. And actually, this type of pipeline could be easily adapted to any other market. Otherwise, you will be burning money. And trust me, we have been doing that mistake before, and we don't want to make it anymore. So let me go briefly about some conclusions about South America. So after all that I mentioned on the dynamics, do we still think that it's a risky, too segmented market to dive in? It's too small? Should I prefer other markets? Well, I think that's missing the point. I think most of the efforts of people just taking a project, trying this market as a secondary market, see if the product works. They see that they fail or they don't have enough traction, not enough or not good enough KPIs. The problem is like they never took the time to analyze those dimensions to actually bring something that has the possibility to have success, not just crossing fingers, throw dice, and ask for some snake eyes. So the fair advice is please don't go solo. All these companies have been doing the same mistake. It's like one-man army. What they're doing, trying to run in everything by themselves. Oh yeah, you can buy ads with what company, you can help with some others, with statistics, KPIs, and so on. But the problem is, you are trying to run in the business by yourself without any local partner that could advise you not to make some mistakes. So that's the first thing that you should be avoided. The second one, you need some solid, strong partnership with local companies. At least if you really want to give a fair chance a product to succeed over there, go there, meet the partners over there, see how real they are. They have been such amount of, I don't want to say scam, but partners that they don't say, they are not truly what they try to sell when they come to different events. So you need to take the time to lower down the risk of partnership with the wrong people. For example, I have here a lot of expert or consultant providing some advice. You should be doing this or that in Latin America. Sounds fine, but most of those type of advice are pretty hollow. So let me help you with a couple that are really going to produce an impact on any product that you could have. So what do you think are the two major entertainment verticals that you could find across Latin America? What are the major phenomena that you can find there? You can think on one or two? Let me help you. One of the biggest one is soccer. Well, soccer is insanely popular worldwide, but in Latin America, it's just freaking nuts. And just take a look at the numbers. The numbers are public in some reports, but you have one out of 5 people that are involved in soccer at some extent. So they are exposed with soccer. So thinking in soccer is quite interesting. You have around 70 million people just across South America that actively follows this sport on a weekly basis. And you have people like in Chile, like the 31% of the population think it's a form of entertainment. So, okay, that's quite interesting. So, but you may be thinking, and that's what some of the advice that I hear about, and that's my point, you don't need to make a soccer game to be involved with the soccer as IP. What's the value of soccer as an IP? And that's when you need to jump deeper. It's like, why the people is so loyal to this soccer? They like soccer as a sport. They like soccer as an entertainment. They like soccer as a brand, the local brands, that's actually the local soccer teams or the national teams. There is an endless amount of possibilities licensing those and are quite cheap and no one is exploring properly. Just an idea. It's like, even if you don't have a soccer game, any other random game, you can use customization with the local teams and you are going to have a huge peak of exposure. So you are going to have a way more effective user acquisition, thinking how to licensing with products that are relevant for the people over there. And the second one, this is insanely huge, are soap operas that are called telenovelas. And there is two major houses, one from Mexico, Televisa, and one from Brazil, O Globo, that produce such amount of content that just in Brazil, O Globo has over 100 million viewers on a weekly basis for the product that they are generating. Licensing any of those series is fairly cheap, and you can develop a product over that. You don't need to create just a narrative game that go around that, but you can explore partnership with those TV networks and how you can reach that audience that simplify for you trying to have a commercial successful product. Because the question at the end is not publishing a game that you already have successfully in Latin America or in South America. It's how you make a business that could be sustainable and grow in South America. That's a question that you should be solving. So just take a look how much is preferred telenovela over all the other genres on Latin America or the Hispanic people here. So with that, just one last slide. Piggyback on those IP and relevant content from some other verticals. Analyze your product, define your target market or audience, cross-reference with local data from South America in this case, and piggyback on IP or relevant content with your own IP, and then expand your verticals through partners. There shouldn't be major problems if you are really committed for the market. So thanks again for the time, and sorry to pack up such amount of information. So it felt a little bit rushed. Thanks.